Ethan was 28 years old, full of talent, intelligence, and dreams that had lived inside his mind for as long as he could remember. He often imagined himself running a successful business, traveling the world, writing a book, staying healthy, and making his parents proud. Every morning he woke up with fresh ideas, but every evening he went to bed with the same promise he had made the night before. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself. I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow became the most comfortable word in his life. It protected him from fear, from failure, and from the discomfort of taking the first step. He believed there would always be another chance, another Monday, another month, another year. He never realized that while he was waiting for the perfect moment, life was quietly moving forward without asking for his permission. One rainy afternoon, Ethan found an old notebook hidden inside a dusty box while cleaning his apartment. It was the journal he had written when he was 18 years old. As he slowly turned the yellow pages, he smiled at first. The notebook was filled with dreams, plans, and goals. He had written that by the age of 25 he wanted to own a company, learn 3 languages, become physically fit, and help children who could not afford education. His smile slowly disappeared. He looked around the small apartment where he had lived for years. The dreams in the notebook were still only dreams. Nothing had changed except the calendar. He closed the notebook and sighed deeply. It doesn't matter, he said quietly. I'm still young. I'll begin tomorrow. The next morning, Ethan walked through a peaceful park on his way home from work. The rain had washed the trees clean, and golden sunlight reflected on the wet paths. Birds sang as children laughed in the distance. On a wooden bench sat an elderly man with silver hair, calmly feeding pigeons. As Ethan passed by, one of the pigeons flew toward him, making him stop. The old man smiled warmly. You seem to be carrying something heavy, the old man said. Ethan looked confused. I don't have anything. You do, the man replied. It's invisible. Ethan laughed politely and sat beside him. What makes you say that? The eyes never lie, the old man answered. Your face tells me you're waiting for a life that hasn't arrived. For a moment, Ethan remained silent. Finally, he admitted, I have many dreams. I just haven't started them yet. The old man nodded slowly. And when will you start? Tomorrow. The old man smiled gently, but there was sadness in his eyes. I used to know someone who loved that word. Really? Yes. What happened to him? The old man looked toward the sky before quietly answering. He died surrounded by unfinished dreams. Ethan felt a chill run through his body. The old man continued. When he was young, he wanted to become a musician. He waited until he had enough money. Then he waited until work became less stressful. Later he waited until his children grew older. Then he waited for retirement. Every stage of life gave him another excuse to postpone his happiness. What happened after retirement? Ethan asked. He became sick. The old man's voice became softer. He finally had time, but he no longer had the strength. Silence filled the park. The pigeons continued eating while leaves danced across the ground. The old man picked up a dry leaf. Do you know what this leaf reminds me of? Ethan shook his head. Life. He gently released it into the wind. It spends months growing without knowing exactly when it will fall. We think we have endless seasons, but none of us knows how many remain. Ethan stared at the falling leaf until it disappeared. I always thought I had plenty of time, he whispered. So did almost everyone who regrets yesterday. The old man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small pocket watch. It looked old but beautiful. This watch belonged to my father. Ethan admired its delicate design. The old man opened it. It stopped working many years ago. Why don't you repair it? The old man smiled. Because it reminds me that time never stops for us, even when we stop using it wisely. Those words stayed with Ethan. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the trees, the old man stood up. Young man, he said, the greatest tragedy isn't dying too soon. What is it then? It's reaching the end of life and discovering you never truly lived. Without another word, he slowly walked away. Ethan watched until the old man disappeared around the corner. That evening, Ethan couldn't sleep. His phone was filled with motivational videos he had saved but never watched completely. His bookshelf contained books he intended to read someday. His closet held running shoes that still looked new. His laptop contained unfinished business plans. Everything around him represented a future he kept postponing. He suddenly realized something painful. His biggest habit wasn't laziness. It was delay. Every dream had been postponed by a single word. Tomorrow. The next morning he woke earlier than usual. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked into his own eyes. For the first time, he asked himself a difficult question. If tomorrow never comes, what would I regret most? The answer came immediately. Not trying. He opened the notebook from his teenage years again. Instead of reading old dreams, he took a pen and wrote one simple sentence beneath them. Today is the day I stop waiting. His heart raced as if he had made a life-changing decision. He put on his running shoes and stepped outside before his mind could invent another excuse. The air felt fresh. His legs felt weak after only a few minutes, but he kept moving. It wasn't a perfect beginning. It wasn't impressive, but it was real. After returning home, he spent 1 hour working on the business idea he had delayed for years. Later that evening he called his parents, something he had also been postponing because he was always too busy. Their happiness reminded him that some opportunities disappear forever if we wait too long. As night arrived, Ethan looked out of his apartment window. The city lights sparkled beneath the dark sky. For the first time in years, he wasn't excited about tomorrow. He was proud of today. He understood that success wasn't created by giant leaps or magical moments. It was built through ordinary days when people chose action over excuses. The future had never been hiding somewhere ahead. It had always been created by what he decided to do in the present. Standing quietly by the window, Ethan smiled to himself. Tomorrow had stolen enough of his life. It would never steal another day again. The morning sunlight slowly filled Ethan's apartment as he woke up before his alarm clock. For the first time in many years, he did not reach for his phone to scroll through endless videos. He did not tell himself he would start later. Instead, he remembered the old man in the park and the sentence he had written in his notebook, "Today is the day I stop waiting." The words felt different now. They were no longer just motivation. They were a promise. He got dressed, tied his running shoes, and stepped outside. The streets were quiet, and the cool morning air filled his lungs. His body still felt tired, and every part of him wanted to return to bed. His mind whispered the same old excuse. You can skip today. One day won't matter. But Ethan smiled. He had finally learned that every great failure begins with just one day, and every great success also begins with just one day. He kept running. It was not fast. It was not graceful. He stopped several times to catch his breath, but he refused to quit. By the time he returned home, sweat covered his face, yet he felt stronger than he had in years. The victory was not over the distance he had run. It was over the excuses he had defeated. After breakfast, he opened the business plan that had been sitting on his laptop for almost 5 years. Hundreds of unfinished ideas filled the pages. Instead of trying to complete everything at once, he worked for only one focused hour. That single hour changed something inside him. He realized that progress did not require endless motivation. It required consistency. The next day he repeated the process. Run, work, learn, improve. The routine seemed ordinary, but ordinary actions performed every day create extraordinary lives. Weeks passed. His body became healthier. His thoughts became clearer. His confidence slowly returned. People at work noticed the difference. Ethan no longer complained about problems. Instead, he searched for solutions. He volunteered for difficult projects instead of avoiding them. His manager began trusting him with greater responsibilities. One afternoon, his old friend Ryan invited him to lunch. Ryan had always been full of brilliant ideas. Every time they met, Ryan spoke about starting a business, writing a book, learning new skills, or traveling the world. As they sat together, Ryan excitedly explained another amazing business idea. It could be huge, Ryan said. I just need the perfect time. Ethan smiled gently. When will that be? Ryan laughed. Probably next month. The answer sounded painfully familiar. Ethan remembered saying almost the exact same words for years. Instead of criticizing his friend, he quietly shared his own experience. I spent most of my life waiting for the perfect moment, Ethan said. But the perfect moment never arrived. The only thing that arrived was regret. Ryan nodded politely but quickly changed the subject. Months continued to pass. Ethan launched a small online business. At first, only a handful of customers bought his products. The profits were tiny. Many people would have called it a failure. But Ethan no longer measured success by immediate results. He measured success by showing up every day. Whenever he felt discouraged, he remembered the old man in the park. He remembered the stopped pocket watch. He remembered the falling leaf. Most importantly, he remembered that life never waits for those who hesitate. One evening, Ethan received an email from a customer thanking him for creating something that had genuinely helped their life. He read the message several times. Years earlier, he would never have received that email because he would never have started. That single message reminded him that action creates opportunities that planning alone never can. His parents also noticed the changes. When he visited them, his mother smiled warmly. "You seem happier." "I am," Ethan replied. "What changed?" "I stopped chasing tomorrow." His father looked proudly at him. "You finally discovered what took me 40 years to understand." As time passed, Ethan's small business slowly expanded. He hired one employee, then another. Eventually, a team of passionate people joined him. The success looked sudden to outsiders. People asked him questions everywhere he went. "What's your secret? How did you become successful? What book changed your life?" Ethan always gave the same answer. "I simply stopped postponing my life." Most people expected a more complicated explanation. There wasn't one. His success had been built from thousands of ordinary decisions to act instead of delay. One rainy afternoon, almost 2 years after meeting the elderly man, Ethan returned to the same park. The same wooden bench stood beneath the old tree. He looked around, hoping to see the man again. Instead, he found only silence. An elderly woman nearby noticed him searching. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan answered. "An old gentleman who used to feed the pigeons here." The woman's smile became gentle. "I knew him." "You did," she nodded. "He passed away last year." Ethan stood completely still. The news struck his heart with unexpected sadness. "He often sat on that bench," the woman continued. "He loved talking to young people. He believed that if even one person stopped wasting their life because of his words, then his own life had been worthwhile." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. Without realizing it, the old man had completely changed his future. Ethan sat quietly on the same bench where they had first spoken. The pigeons landed around him just as they had that day. He reached into his pocket and removed the old notebook. The pages were no longer filled with unfinished dreams. Many goals now had check marks beside them. Others had notes showing progress. Some dreams had grown into realities he once believed were impossible. On the final page, Ethan wrote another sentence. "Thank you for teaching me that life rewards action, not intention." He closed the notebook and looked toward the sky. The clouds slowly moved across the afternoon sun. Time continued moving exactly as it always had. The only difference was that Ethan had finally decided to move with it instead of watching it pass. Years later, Ethan became known as someone who inspired others. He gave talks at schools, businesses, and community events. People often expected him to share complicated strategies for success. Instead, he told them a simple story about a young man who kept saying, "Tomorrow," and an old stranger who carried a broken pocket watch. At the end of every speech, he asked the audience one question. "What dream have you been delaying?" The room always became silent. Everyone had an answer. Then Ethan would smile and say, "Don't promise yourself tomorrow. Promise yourself today." As people left those events, many decided to make a phone call they had delayed for years. Others finally applied for a job, started a business, forgave someone, returned to school, or began taking care of their health. Their lives changed, not because they suddenly became fearless, but because they stopped allowing tomorrow to control today. Ethan eventually realized that the greatest enemy of success is rarely failure. It is delay. Dreams rarely disappear overnight. They fade little by little every time we choose comfort over action. Life does not ask whether we are ready. It simply keeps moving forward. Every sunrise is an invitation. Every hour is an opportunity. Every moment is a gift that can never be repeated.